Hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and my first question this week comes from Finite Atticus, who says, Hey Steve, in continuing the Radfem question, I believe a few months back I asked a question about your thoughts on the subject, and you answered consistently that time and in this episode. I have a new question along the same lines. I've been studying evolutionary biology, psychology, and have discovered a growing trend among scientists that explains male-female behavior from an evolutionary rather than traditional psychological, meaning Freud-Jung perspective. The studies I've seen and the books I've read seek to explain, but not justify, most male and female behaviors, even things like rape and murder. What are your feelings on the subject? I think that it can help the cause for both men and women to reach greater understanding about sexuality and gender difference if these things are understood at a younger age, like during puberty. I think it would be a great thing for young people who are just beginning relationships to actually have a working knowledge of the opposite sex, instead of being lambasted later with our obvious differences. I'd like Ashley's opinion too, if she doesn't mind. Well, you're stuck with me, I'm afraid, Atticus. Ashley wasn't interested in answering the question. But I will say, I think that explaining gender roles and gender-type behavior evolutionarily sounds like a great idea. I mean, at first thought, I think, yeah, that's great, you know, because as you say, that sort of science, evolution, does not justify what it explains. It just explains it. It says this isn't how things should be. This isn't expressing approval. This is just why people act this way. And I think it's a great idea. But one of the other commenters on your question, I think it was an Entropy fan, brought up a really interesting point, which is that we have to be careful that we can rely on the data, maybe not even the data, but the conclusions we draw from the data when we seek to explain gender roles from an evolutionary standpoint, because our culture, our entire society, is so unavoidably gender biased. And to cite an example of how that is just a fundamental fact of our society, you know, an Entropy fan cited, you know, the fact that we just, without even thinking about it, we raise boys to like the color blue. You know, we raise boys to play with Tonka trucks, and we raise girls to like pink and play with Barbie dolls. I mean, we don't even think about that most of the time. Most of us don't. It's just automatic. We have gender biases just built into us culturally that we don't even realize. So we would really have to take care to screen those out as much as possible before we could come up with reliable conclusions that could explain male-female behavior from an evolutionary perspective. Now, assuming we could do that, and assuming we could correct sufficiently for those sorts of gender biases, I think it's a great idea. Susan Martin. Hi, Steve. I wanted to ask a question that may expand on the answer you gave about science and dogma. I know that science has its roots in philosophy, but it has clearly diverged into its own separate category. My question is, do you think that science needs philosophy? To me, one is useless without the other. Science can get bogged down with details to the point it loses all real practical meaning, and philosophy can be so obscure that it lacks any focus. In other words, science can't see the forest for the trees, and philosophy can't see the trees for the forest. Someone asked a question a few episodes back about, it was something, what do I feel about philosophy, or what do I think about like science versus philosophy, or science and philosophy? And my answer was basically, I think, or what is more important, I think maybe was the question. What's more important, science or philosophy? And I said, for me, it's science, and I think that philosophy should be at the service of science, because science is where we get our information from. And if you're not basing your philosophy on anything real, then your philosophy has no practical application and is basically just useless. And some people commented to remind me that you can't do science without philosophy. And they're right. They were right to correct me. It's not just that science is useless without philosophy. Science is impossible without philosophy, because there's no such thing as a set of self-interpreting facts. There's no such thing as a self-interpreting text. You have to bring something to it. You have to use something to help you to understand or put what you're seeing in context or derive some meaning from it. So you can't do science without philosophy. That being said, I would still say that I am much more of an empirical, scientific type guy than I am a philosophizer. And when I perceive that things don't really have a lot of practical application for me in real life, I find myself a little less interested in them. But of course, empiricism itself is a philosophy, so you can't really get away from it. We do make a distinction between science and philosophy these days. There is definitely science is sort of the practical side, and philosophy is sort of the more thoughtful, imaginative side. But they are two parts of the same thing. They are two sides of the same coin. You can't do science without some underlying philosophy to drive it, and you can't do. I don't think you can do really practical, useful philosophy if you completely ignore science. So they're inextricably linked. Jade Mask 14. Hi Steve, I used to be a Christian, but the view on LGBT rights were what started to question my faith, and then I started to see that religion started to look like slavery. When I started to lose my faith, I didn't have a lot of help getting out of faith, and right now I just don't know what to do. I see videos, I'm not sure how I should tell my family. Do you know of any way to help me? Questions like this come up a lot, it seems like, in these videos, and I don't mind answering it. I feel like every time someone asks me a question like this, I should try to answer it because, like I've said before, I've never really been in that situation. By the time I announced that I was an atheist, I was in my late 20s and I wasn't living at home and I didn't really give a shit anyway. So I mean, I never faced any sort of pressure of, oh gee, how do I tell my family? You know, so whenever someone comes to me with, you know, asking for advice on that sort of thing, I feel like I have to say something because, I mean, you know, not everybody has it as easy as I had it. The only thing I can tell you honestly that I think might help is when you tell your family, and I'm not sure what your situation is, I don't know how old you are, I don't know if you're still living at home or what the deal is, if you have like a church family or, you know, a church culture that you're a part of that you feel like you might be ostracized from if they found out you were an atheist or whatever. I don't know what your situation is, but the only thing I can tell you is to just ask your family for respect. Just ask your family to respect your right to have a different belief. And don't make it about, you know, atheism versus Christianity and you know, it's going to be a fight and an argument, and give, you know, if they're worried about that sort of thing, let them know, like, we're not, every single conversation we have from now on is not going to be about religion. You know, it doesn't have to change anything about the way we relate to each other practically. It's just, this is the way I feel, this is what I think, I have reasons for this, I have reasons for believing this. I disagree with the way the church handles their stance on gay rights. I don't like the way the church treats certain people. I don't think that some of the things the church teaches are true, and I can't be a member of a group that I believe is basing its principles on false teachings. I just can't do it. It's a matter of conscience, it's a matter of honesty, and this is just how I feel. And just ask for their respect. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know how they'll react. I don't know your family. I don't know what sort of people they are. But I think if you do it from a place of respect and of kindness and of honesty, I mean, just take a shot. I don't know. But be honest and be true to yourself. That's the only real advice I can give you, and I hope it works out. I hope if you tell your family, I hope that they accept it in a friendly and open and tolerant way. So best of luck to you. Harry Fed, hey Steve, something I've been wondering about for a while but kept forgetting to ask. What are your thoughts on studying scripture, Bible, Torah, Quran, etc. in public school from a literary standpoint? I am in complete support of that. I think that is a great idea for two reasons. One, I think that many religious texts, including the Bible, especially the King James translation of the Bible as an English major, have extraordinary value as literature. I just posted a 5 Stupid Things video about the Old Testament a few days before this video goes up, where I said some nice things about the Old Testament sort of at the end after taking the piss out of it for most of the video. And one of the things I said was I think that there is a great deal of value and a great deal of beauty in the King James Bible as literature, as mythology. And some people replied and said, have you ever read it cover to cover? Like, there's stretches of it that are just unreadable. And how can you say it's one of the greatest books ever written if there are so many places where it's just so dull and convoluted and hard to follow? And, you know, how can you say that? And I'm certainly not saying that it's a perfect book, and I'm certainly not saying that every passage or even every book or even every 2 or 3 books in a row necessarily are of great value, are you know, worthy of being admired. But I am saying that the King James Bible is filled with incredibly memorable passages, with great, beautiful language, with wonderful poetry, with just stunningly beautiful writing. Not 100% of it, but enough of it that it has been a huge influence on Western culture and on the English language. There's just no denying that. And I think it should be studied in the same way that we study Homer and Aristotle and Sophocles and the Epic of Gilgamesh and all sorts of other ancient literature. I mean, and a lot of that is above high school level. But yeah, I think the Bible should be studied as literature. I'm completely in favor of that. And ditto for the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and lots of other religious texts that are really have great value, either because there's a beautiful translation of them, or because the myths themselves have a lot of poetic value or a lot of mythical value and are just great stories and good to learn about, or have had some great influence on modern cultures. I just think there's a great deal to be learned from studying those texts as literature. And the second reason to do it is because studying a text like the Bible as literature will, I think, help to break this spell that is surrounding the Bible, particularly in Christendom, in the U.S. and in Europe, and this idea that you can't do that to the Bible. You can't study the Bible like any other book. You can't study the Bible like you study, you know, a Greek tragedy. It just, you're not allowed to do that. Once people get used to the idea of looking at the Bible as a piece of literature, I think it will help to break that spell. I think it will help to take the Bible, sort of bring it back down to earth. And I think it's very worth doing. It's worth doing to rehabilitate the Bible in terms of its literary status, and to get people used to looking at it and finding things to value about it and finding things to criticize about it and analyze it and look at it with great scrutiny and honesty, and not be afraid that you're committing blasphemy in doing so, as a work of literature, not just as holy scripture. I think it's just a great idea all around, and I would be completely in favor of the Bible and other religious texts being taught as literature in public schools. And in fact, there are some public schools where that very thing is done, and I think it's great. Bonzi Kamikaze, do you believe all aspects of all religions are evil? If there are any positives about religion or religious people, in your opinion, what are they? When I was a street kid many moons ago, the only people who seemed to care about my plight were the Christians. So I do find it somewhat distressing when the atheist movement stereotypes all Christians by the worst examples they can find. I don't think that's fair either. I think it's worth remembering as atheists that not all Christians are members of the Westboro Baptist Church. And of course I don't think that all of religions are evil, and I certainly don't think that all religious people are evil. With religion, I mean, one thing I have said is that most, if not all, of the good stuff that you can find in religions are not exclusive to any one religion or even to religion in general. Most of the really good moral teachings that you would find in the Bible, for instance, like judge not lest you be judged, love your neighbor, those are moral principles that you can find in cultures all over the world, all throughout history, You don't need the Bible to derive those principles. Those principles come from empathy, from justice, from human rights, from sense of fairness, from wanting to have a peaceful society where individuals respect each other. You don't need any particular religious authority to tell you that that's the way you should treat people. So those things aren't originally from religion. Those things aren't unique to religion, but nonetheless, they are a part of many religious traditions. And just the presence of those principles and others like them in religious texts and in religious traditions means that religion is not completely evil. And again, I think that's a caricature. I'm certainly not saying that religion as a whole is a positive thing. I'm certainly not saying that we wouldn't be better off without it. But to say that it's all bad is just wrong. I just don't see how that's a reasonable thing to say. And we're religious people is even easier. I know so many people who are deeply religious. In my part of the world, they're all Christians, but they need not be. There are deeply devout religious people who feel that their faith calls them to help the less fortunate, who feels that their faith calls them to treat people fairly, to treat people with kindness, to oppose cruelty and oppression, to try to make the world a better place, to feed the hungry, to give shelter to the homeless, things like this. And I think that's wonderful. Some of the most moral, upstanding, admirable people I have ever known personally in my life have been religious people. So you're absolutely right. As atheists, we should attack and challenge and oppose religion for its falsity, for its immorality, for its overreach into the lives of others, for its imposition of its morals on those outside of the faith. We should absolutely stand against it and challenge it and oppose it as strongly as we can, but we should not caricature it as just 100% evil without any redeeming value, and we certainly should not do that to religious people. David Landon. Steve, I have volunteered at Habitat for Humanity a couple of times now, and I really enjoy using my engineering and construction skills to help make people homes, but I'm always troubled by the overtly religious nature of the charity. As an atheist, I wish I could help without a church or religion in general getting to leverage the credit into fundraising or proselytizing. I've also donated money to secular charities, but I can afford to donate my time more easily than money. What do you think? Should I just get over it, or should I focus on secular charities only? My advice would be to get over it. It seems like your work with Habitat means a lot to you. It just from the tone of your question, the things you say, it seems like it's really important to you that you personally get a lot out of it. And look, Habitat for Humanity helps a lot of people. I think it's a good organization. Yes, it is religious. It does call itself a housing ministry. But it does good work for people. And yeah, if you're an atheist, I can understand maybe being conflicted about it, working with a religious charity, but at the end of the day, you feel like you're doing good work. I think you are doing good work. I don't see a problem with it. I think you should sleep okay at night volunteering for Habitat for Humanity. I mean, look, if there's a secular group in your area that's doing similar things and you would feel more comfortable volunteering with them, I mean, that would be great too. But you know, you're not volunteering with Habitat in order to proclaim the message of Jesus. You're volunteering with Habitat, presumably, to help build houses for people who don't have houses. And I think that's a great thing. And I don't think that you should feel guilty about the fact that you're doing it under the auspices of a religious organization, because you're doing good work. Super Steelers Fan 100. Dear Steve, I am a high school student starting an atheist secular club in my highly Christian school. Any advice? Just make it clear that you don't want to be a fly in the ointment. You want to be a friend, you know? You want to be a part of the community. That to me is the most important thing. And that to me is the most important thing about just the religion versus atheism conversation in general. I mean, yes, obviously, there are battles to fight, and obviously there are times when, as atheists, I think it's completely legitimate for us to flat out call bullshit on things that religious folks do. But it's also important to build bridges and to reach out a hand and to treat people as friends whenever we can. instead of treating people as enemies. I think that's just the way I feel about it. There's a time and a place for both, but overall I think the tone of the conversation could be much friendlier and much kinder from both sides. Not, I'm not just saying that atheists are the only ones being assholes, because clearly we are not. But yeah, if you're starting an atheist secular group at a Christian school, I would say be as open and friendly and inviting to the Christians outside of your group as you possibly can. Let them know that they can come to your meetings. Don't let them hijack anything. Don't let them come and take over your meeting and try to make you feel like shits for being atheist. Don't let them run the show. But let them know that they're welcome, that they can come and have conversations with you guys, that you'll be friendly to them, that you can shake hands with an atheist and be seen in the same club as an atheist, and it's okay. Jesus won't get mad. You're not going to be struck by lightning if you... Minimal effort for the segue. But effort nonetheless. Hey, that sound effect means it's time for...
The Lightning Round. Rapid fire questions. Glib and adequate answers.
Eric Chang. Hey Steve, which would you rather see on May 6, 2016? Captain America 3 or Batman vs. Superman? Batman vs. Superman. Even though it may well be horrible, I can't help it. I'm a DC guy. I was DC born, DC bred, and though I'll be goddamned, I'll be DC dead. I'll wait till Captain America 3 comes out on Netflix. It's not for 2 more years anyway. Terry Williams, my questions must be pretty boring. In honor of boredom, here's a question about it. Have you ever walked out of or seriously considered walking out of a movie that bored you senseless? If so, which ones? I've never actually walked out, but the one that I came closest to walking out on was Gods and Generals. The prequel, actually, to Gettysburg by Ron Maxwell, the Civil War epic. That is such a long, boring, horrible movie. It's just a really, really bad movie. And there's an intermission. It's that long that when I went to see it in the theater, there was an intermission, and I was this close to leaving during the intermission. I just thought it was awful. But I stayed and watched the whole thing, and the second half was awful too. C codes. Steve, I don't know if you are aware, I assume you might be though, but it seems that a few of the ads that come up before your videos are about promoting Islam and touting some dude's ability to empower me to better teach some random dude at work Islam. After getting up off the floor from almost dying of laughter at the irony, I'm just curious if you are actually all right or not with this kind of thing, promoting the very idea that the video it's on is against. You know what? I have no control over who buys ads on my videos, and I mean, if an Islam organization, if a Muslim advocacy organization wants to buy ad space on my video and put a little bit of money in an atheist's pocket, that's how I look at it. I'm all for it. I don't care, and I don't really have that much control over what kind of ads get shown on my videos anyway. I'm happy that anybody buys ads on my videos, quite frankly. I think it's kind of funny too. I'm happy to take money from religious groups to make my atheist videos. That's great. Tony Reed. Hey Steve, even though you end each episode of 5 Stupid Things by saying the hardest part is only picking 5, has there ever been a week or a topic when it was hard to actually find 5 stupid things about a topic? Yeah, when I did 5 Stupid Things about me, it was hard to even think of one. I really had to sweat to do that one. That was damn near impossible. Most of that shit I just made up, honestly. Sam Clemens, RIGL. Hey Steve, third time's the charm, I hope. What are your thoughts and opinions on upcoming sci-fi flicks such as Godzilla, Guardians of the Galaxy, Jupiter Ascending, Edge of Tomorrow, Transcendence, etc.? I'm sort of kind of curious about Godzilla just because I remember as a kid being a huge fan of the classic Toho Godzilla movies. I love the guy in a suit Godzilla. It's one of my favorite things ever, still to this day. And I'm curious to see if the new version will fuck it up as bad as the old new version with Matthew Broderick and the really horrible redesigned CGI Godzilla. So we'll see. Guardians of the Galaxy had a fun-looking trailer, but I don't know if I'll actually see it. And the others that you mentioned, I either haven't heard of or I'm just not that interested in at this point. Nico Fair. Hey, my man Stevesy, I gotta know, how many damn hard drives do you own in order to save all of your vids and such? It's gotta be a lot. Keep up the entertaining stuff, Nick. Well, thank you, Nick. Actually, I only have one hard drive at this point. I have a 1 terabyte external hard drive that I archive all my YouTube stuff on. And it's just a little over half full at this point, believe it or not, even though I've done like 800 some videos. Because every so often I go through and I just delete all of my unused footage. I don't save the unused raw footage that I don't use in the final videos. I'm not like a video hoarder. Once I've finished a video and it's done, within a few months usually I go through and I delete all of the raw stuff. So it actually doesn't take up as much space as you might think. Santa is my lord. Hey, Steve, what is your opinion of The Amazing Atheist? And also, Dylan Olmstead is another commenter who asked what I thought of The Amazing Atheist and also what I thought of Thunderfoot. I don't subscribe to either of them. I did subscribe to Thunderfoot until relatively recently, and I unsubscribed just because I realized I just didn't watch his videos that much. And same thing for The Amazing Atheist. I was a subscriber of his at one point, and I unsubscribed because I just stopped watching his stuff, and I decided, you know, what's the point of having this in my feed if I'm not going to watch it? I have nothing against either guy. Thunderfoot, I think, has said some really, really stupid things regarding feminism, but when he sticks to arguments against creationism or science videos, I'm usually okay with it. And The Amazing Atheist, I've never interacted with him personally. I don't know him. I don't think he knows me. But I have a problem with his tone. His tone just isn't attractive to me. He may very well be a nice guy. I have nothing against him. I wish him all the success in the world. But he's just not my cup of tea. And, you know, nothing wrong with that. I don't wish any ill on the guy. But I don't, so I know, for both The Amazing Atheist and Thunderfoot, I have nothing but best wishes for both of them, but I don't watch either of them. Timothy81. Hi, Steve. Is it true that Republicans lack souls? Yes. Yes, it is true. But I'm not cocky about it because, I mean, I don't have one either. You know? I don't think anybody does. So, yes. Republicans do lack souls, to answer your question. That's it for the questions. But before I get out of here, I want to give a shout out, as always. And the shout out this week is a little different than my typical fare. I usually try to give a shout out to an atheist with kind of an up-and-coming channel. This time is a little different. The shout out this week goes to AlternateHistoryHub. This is such a cool channel, such a cool concept for a channel, because all the videos on AlternateHistoryHub are about what-if questions. What if the Allies had lost World War II, for instance? Things like that. He does videos on these what-if questions. And what if major events in history had gone the other way? And it's mostly speculation, but it's informed speculation, and it's very entertaining and very thought-provoking. It's like videos about the premises of episodes of Sliders in the first season of Sliders, before that show just completely ran off the rails and became sci-fi action schlock. When Sliders was still sort of interested in like the alternate Earth type of thing. That's what you'll find on Alternate History Hub. It's such a fun channel, such an interesting channel. About 12,000 subs at this point, which is nothing to be ashamed of, but it could always use a hell of a lot more, and I think it deserves a lot more. So if you've never seen Alternate History Hub, check out that channel, watch a few of those videos, and subscribe if it's your type of thing, because I think it's well worth your attention. Well, that is it for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will be back again next week to do this all over again, provided, of course, that you ask me some questions, because in order for me to do this at all, you have to ask. So please leave a comment on this video with your question for next time. Ask me anything about anything. No subject is too serious. No subject is too silly. I will answer as many of them as I possibly can in the next video in this series. So until then, take care, you guys. I'll see you next time.